All right, so this one actually surprised me here, the S25 FE versus the S25, the base model. Typically people are, asking questions about, maybe the FE versus the Ultra. But a lot of people were interested in this base model. Should you spend the extra money to get the base model? And we're going to go over everything. I think it really depends on what type of user you are. If you do plan on buying these phones unlocked, because most people are going to buy these phones on a carrier deal, something like that. But I think that if you do want to get the S25, guys, it's actually a very good deal in the used refurbished marketplace. Brand new, it's still almost $800. But the one I have here is used refurbished, and it's $481 right now. If you get it locked to a carrier, it comes down even more to $350. The S25 FE is going to cost you around $650. But let's just go over it since everyone asks. Obviously, the main thing that's going to pop out here is the size difference. The S25 is a lot more easier to one hand. So if you have smaller hands, this device is just way easier to manage. The S25 FE, of course, a bigger device, but as far as the design, they're very similar. Besides, Samsung has some thicker camera rings on the base model S25, and the S25 FE has some super thin camera rings. Like we saw in the S24 Plus comparison, the rings are even thinner than the S24 Plus. It gives it a very premium look from the back. And like I said, the thicker camera rings, it hasn't grown on me, but some people like it, some people don't. So it just depends. Both these phones are IP68 dust and water resistant, and they pretty much have the same design for the most part. So those are the pretty essential differences here. All right, so as far as the displays goes, you do have a 6.2 inch display on the S25 base model. It's an LTPO display, AMOLED, 120 Hz HDR10 Plus. It is 2600 nits peak brightness. It is a 1080p panel, 416 for the PPI. This has the Victus 2 glass on here, and we do have some pretty slim bezels at 91.1% screen to body ratio, so you can kind of tell the difference, pretty easily from the bottom of these phones. And the top, really not so much, but it really pops out at the bottom. And the sides we can't really tell that much of a difference, but yeah, it's really the bottom where it pops out. So it does give the S25 a lot more premium look from the front. And then on the FE, we have a dynamic AMOLED panel as well. It's 120 Hz HDR10 Plus, 1900 nits peak brightness. What we're missing here is the LTPO technology on the FE. It is also a 1080p panel with actually a slightly lower PPI at 385. They both look pretty similar from the front. As far as like the colors do look a little bit more vivid. Let me see if I have my actual vivid slider turned on, because it does look a lot more vivid here, but I might not have this turned on. Yeah, I don't have it turned on, so we'll probably get the same. Yeah, we should get the same look now. Yeah, so the overall displays, they look extremely similar, guys, for the most part here. Obviously, the S25 is going to have a slightly better panel. The 2600 nits peak brightness, it is a little bit brighter, but the S25 FE is still pretty bright outdoors. So that's not like a major difference. But like I said, it is a little bit brighter. It does have an LTPO display. So you do have the better display on the S25 base model here for sure. Let's talk about these specs a little bit more here. The FE does have the Exynos 2400 processor. It does have 128 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM. The S25 has the Snapdragon 8 Elite processor, 128 gigs and 12 gigs of RAM. These are the two base models here. And you can see the score difference. You're getting much better performance on this 8 Elite processor. It's a very powerful processor. It's really hard to even take advantage of the power that the 8 Elite has. And if we do go ahead and jump into our 3D Mark here, we can also see the score difference is pretty big as well too. So overall, if you just want the more powerful phone, let's say the more future-proof phone, if you plan to keep it for the full 7-year lifespan that these phones have, then you're gonna want to go with the S25, the base model here. It just has so much power that it's really hard to take advantage. And also, this chipset is going to be a lot better optimized for gaming. Now, when it comes to general performance, you really don't notice that much of a difference. We do have One UI 8 on here, so if there is like a slight difference, it might be due to that. But so far, like animations if you're somebody just doing regular stuff on your phone, the FE is more than capable of just doing regular stuff, right? Animations stay consistently smooth. You might not can keep as many apps in the background because you have 8 gigs of RAM on this base model. So, that's something to know for heavy multitaskers. But yeah, guys, the FE, just because it has this Exynos chip, it has been performing very well for me. So I don't actually have an issue with it in the real world. People look at the benchmarks and stuff like that, but when you're just using the phone, it's perfectly smooth and fast. So I don't have an issue with it. But when we talk about, let's say you're more of a power user, we're talking about maybe you're doing 4K editing on your phone, you're playing a lot of games, emulators. This 8 Elite processor, like I said, it's really strong. But as you guys can see, it's able to keep up just in general performance. It's not like it's a gigantic difference here when it comes to performance. And animations look pretty consistent. They're pretty much on par with each other. So that's really nice. So now when we come into PUBG, it's a kind of a different story here. So not only will you get just better gaming performance with the base model S25, as you can see we have 120 frames. The issue you'll kind of run into with this FE model here, and again, I'm hoping that it does get updated, but like I said, typically what it launches with is what it launches with for the rest of its lifespan. But you can only have 60 frames, which is a little bit underwhelming for a device with this type of power. Yeah, so it's just something to just keep in mind if you are someone who's a gamer. The S25 or the 8 Elite is just going to be overall better if you're gaming, playing emulators, and stuff like that. And then I feel like down the line, I think the S25 will be a lot smoother as well. So again, if you're just a normal kind of user, medium to light user, the Exynos 2400 is more than enough power for, I think, most people. If you think you're more of a power user, then yeah, I think it's worth the investment, especially if you're going to keep the phone for a significant amount of time. All right, so as far as the Galaxy AI features go, they are essentially the same, which is a good thing. So you're not really missing out on any AI features. All the features you have on the S25, you have on the FE model here. Your circle to search, of course, here, very useful. And then your updated Gemini is also here as well. So everything you have on the S25 is going to be here on the S25 FE. Another difference is with the fingerprint scanner, you have an ultrasonic fingerprint scanner on the S25. The FE, it does have the optical one, but it's not slow by any means. It does work. There's just like a slight delay in terms of speed, but it works perfectly fine. So let's see if we see a significant difference in picture and video quality here. The S25, it does have a 50 megapixel standard, a 10 megapixel telephoto, 3x optical, 30x max zoom, and then we have 8K 24 and 30 video, along with a 12 megapixel ultra wide. We also have a 12 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 4K 60. The FE has a similar camera setup at 50 megapixel standard, 8 megapixel telephoto, 3x optical, 30x zoom, and then we have a 12 megapixel ultra wide. We can shoot in 8K 30. And then we have a 12 megapixel selfie that also shoots in 4K 60. actually pretty curious to see what the speaker quality difference is. We're at max volume. We'll start with the S25 FE. Yeah, so they sound pretty similar, but you do have a cleaner sound on the S25 base model here. The S25 FE, it sounds pretty good. I don't have an issue with it. It just sounds like a slightly cheaper speaker, like almost kind of like a muffled sound. But I don't want to make it seem like, you know, when you say muffled, it just sounds bad, but it just sounds a little bit cheaper. Yeah, you just have a cleaner sound on the S25. The bass is present on both. I can hear the 808s. I can hear the kicks on here as well. So again, you have pretty good speakers, but I prefer the sound coming out the S25 for sure. Battery life is very good on both of these phones. The FE has been extremely good, and the S25 base model has been also very good as well too. Even though there's a big battery size difference with the FE coming in at 4900 versus the 4000 milliamp hour battery, because we have a smaller display and a slightly more efficient chipset, you actually get pretty similar battery life on the S25 base model and the FE. From my experience as a lighter user, I don't really gain much, so you can pretty much use these phones for the entire day. I've never had an issue getting more than, you know, 6 hours of screen on time. So you could definitely get 6 hours of screen on time. The battery charging stats goes, the S25 is 25 watts versus the 45 watts on the S25 FE, but it doesn't really feel that much different because you have a smaller battery to charge on the S25. You also have wireless and reverse wireless charging on both of these phones, which is pretty nice, but you actually do get Qi 2 charging on the S25. The FE does have faster charging speeds with the wireless at 25 watts. So overall, I would say it really comes down to what you think of the picture quality, and then the overall, if you are someone who's a gamer, right, or consider yourself more of a power user and you plan to keep these phones for a longer period of time, honestly, I would just buy an S25 in the used refurbished marketplace like the one I have here. I know a lot of people don't like doing that, but if you do want to, you know, get the FE, it's really not that much different from an S25. I think if you're just a normal person. But like I said, this comparison, I really feel like it comes down to the cameras, because I don't think most people are gaming and doing emulators and editing on their phone. So you might not need all the power that the S25 offers. So be sure to let me know what you guys think.